In a world filled with pain and struggle, Elowen roams the dark streets of Eldoria, feeling lost and alone as she searches for food and shelter. One night, she accidentally discovers a secret meeting where powerful figures plot against the people, stirring a mix of fear and curiosity within her. As she listens closely, Elowen realizes that these plans are connected to her family's tragic past. This shocking truth ignites a fierce determination in her heart, setting her on a path of rebellion and hope. Elowen moved quietly through the dimly lit streets of Eldoria, her heart heavy with loneliness. The cobblestones felt cold beneath her bare feet, and the shadows of the tall buildings loomed over her like dark giants. She had learned to navigate this world of despair, scavenging for scraps of food and searching for a place to rest her weary head. Each day was a struggle, yet hope flickered faintly in her chest, urging her to keep going. That night, however, something felt different. A tingle of unease prickled her skin as she wandered deeper into the heart of the city. The air was thick with tension, and the usual sounds of the streets seemed muted, as if the world was holding its breath. Elowen's instincts whispered caution, but curiosity tugged at her, and she followed the sound of hushed voices around a corner. There, hidden behind a crumbling wall, she spotted a group of men in dark cloaks. Their faces were obscured, but their voices carried the weight of secrets. "We cannot let them find out," one man urged, his voice low and urgent. "The people must not know what we plan." Elowen's heart raced as she strained to hear more. "Trust me," another replied, sounding grim. "If we don't act now, we risk losing everything. The council is watching. They know there are whispers of rebellion." A chill ran down Elowen's spine. Rebellion? The word hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy with implications she struggled to grasp. What were they plotting? And how did it concern her? As she listened, Elowen's mind raced back to her family. They had been part of the resistance, fighting against the very government that now loomed like a shadow over Eldoria. Memories flooded her thoughts, her mother's fierce gaze, her father's warm embrace. The council had taken them both, leaving her alone in a world that felt increasingly hostile. How could this conspiracy tie back to her past? The haunting realization gripped her heart. She could feel the fire of determination igniting within her. "What if we fail?" one of the cloaked figures asked, voice trembling with fear. "The council has eyes everywhere. We must be careful." Elowen clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. She wanted to shout, to demand answers, but she remained hidden, a silent witness to a world she longed to be part of. "Failure is not an option," the leader replied, his voice steady. "We have a chance to change everything. We must act before it's too late." Those words echoed in Elowen's mind, stirring something deep within her. Change, hope, justice. Could she be a part of this? Could she finally stand up for the memory of her parents and the life they had fought for? The meeting broke up, and the shadowy figures dispersed into the night. Elowen watched them go, her heart pounding. She knew she had stumbled upon something significant. The government's secrets, the whispers of rebellion. These were her paths to understanding her family's tragic past and her own future. But what could a lonely girl like her do against such powerful forces? As she stepped back into the shadows, the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. She could choose to remain in the shadows, to keep her head down and survive. Or she could reach for the flame of rebellion that flickered within her, risking everything to uncover the truth. What would she do? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as she made her way through the darkened streets of Eldoria. With each step she took, Elowen felt the spark of rebellion grow stronger, igniting a resolve she never knew she had. The story of her family, the secrets of the council, and the cries for justice swirled together in her mind. She was not just a lonely scavenger anymore. She was a part of something bigger. And as the night deepened, so did her determination to fight for a better future. Alawan wandered through the streets of Eldoria, the chill of the evening air wrapping around her like a heavy cloak. As she passed by familiar places, memories flooded back, dancing like shadows in her mind. She could almost hear her mother's laughter echoing against the stone walls of the city. "Alawan, come here," her mother would call, her voice bright and warm. But those days felt like a distant dream, lost in the fog of time. Alawan paused in front of a small park where she had played as a child. The swings creaked softly in the wind, and for a moment she could see herself there, young and carefree, swinging high into the sky. "I miss you both," she whispered to the empty air, tears welling in her eyes. As she continued her walk, each landmark brought another wave of memories. The old bakery where her father used to buy fresh bread had been replaced by a cold stone building. "He fought for a better world," Alawan murmured, remembering the stories her parents told her of kindness and justice. They believed in something greater. Her heart ached with a mix of pride and sorrow. They had stood up against the government, fighting for the rights of the people, yet it had cost them everything. "What would you want me to do?" she pondered. "Would you want me to fight, or would you want me to stay safe?" Lost in thought, Alawan turned a corner and stumbled upon a small, dimly lit shop. Its door was slightly ajar, and curiosity pulled her inside. Dust motes floated in the air, and she spotted a weathered trunk in the corner. She approached it cautiously, her fingers trembling with anticipation. As she opened the trunk, her heart raced. Inside, she found a hidden journal, its leather cover cracked and worn. The pages were yellowed with age, yet they still held the vibrant words of her mother. Alawan carefully flipped through the pages, each line revealing stories of hope and resistance. "Together, we can change the world," one passage read. "It is our duty to stand up for those who cannot." Alawan felt a fire ignite within her as she read. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, urging her to embrace the legacy of rebellion. Just then, she heard a voice behind her. "What have you found?" It was a stranger, a young man with piercing blue eyes and an air of confidence. Alawan quickly closed the journal, her heart racing. "It's nothing," she stammered, trying to hide the truth. The young man stepped closer, a knowing smile on his face. "It doesn't look like nothing to me. I can see the passion in your eyes." I was just remembering my parents," Alawan admitted, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over her. "They fought against the regime. They believed in standing up for what is right." The stranger's expression softened. "I understand. My name is Kale. I used to fight too, but the world can be cruel. It takes courage to face it." Alawan met his gaze, and for a moment, they shared an unspoken understanding. "But what can I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am just one person." "Every great change starts with one person," Kyle replied earnestly. "You have the spirit of a rebel. You can honor your parents' legacy by continuing their fight. But it won't be easy." She felt a surge of determination. "I want to fight. I want to find the truth and help others." Kale nodded, respect shining in his eyes. "Then you must decide. Will you embrace this path, knowing the risks that come with it?" Alawan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her choice. The journal lay open in her hands, filled with her mother's dreams and hopes. "I will," she said firmly, her heart pounding with resolve. "I will stand up for what is right, no matter the cost." Kale smiled, a spark of admiration in his gaze. "Then let's get ready. The fight for Eldoria needs brave souls like you." With a newfound sense of purpose, Alawan stepped out of the shop, the journal clutched tightly to her chest. The echoes of her past now guided her steps, urging her to confront the shadows that loomed over her city and to embrace the legacy her parents had left behind. Alawan stepped into the dimly lit room where the underground resistance gathered. The air was thick with anticipation, and her heart raced. She had made the decision to join them, but doubt still lingered in the back of her mind. Would she be able to contribute? Would they accept her? As she entered, she caught sight of Kale, the leader of the group. His presence commanded attention. He stood tall, with a scar running down his cheek, a reminder of his troubled past. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Aloan. "Aloan!" he called out, his voice steady and inviting. "I'm glad you made it. We were just about to start." She nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. "I want to help. I want to fight," she said, trying to keep her voice strong. Kale stepped closer, studying her. "It won't be easy. We face dangers that could cost us everything. Are you sure you're ready?" Elowen took a deep breath. "I've lost so much already. I can't stand by and do nothing. I need to do this." "Then welcome to the fight," he said, a hint of a smile on his lips. "But first, you'll need to prove your commitment." The training began the next day. Alowen found herself in the outskirts of Eldoria, surrounded by other rebels. They were a mix of young and old, all united by a common goal. As she trained, she felt the weight of their stories. Each person carried their own burden of loss and hope, and she began to feel a sense of belonging. During a break, Elowen sat next to a woman named Mira, who had lost her brother to the regime. "I joined because I couldn't watch them take away everything I loved," Mira shared, her eyes filled with determination. "What about you?" Elowen hesitated for a moment, then replied, "I need to uncover the truth about my family. They were taken from me because of this fight. I want to honor their memory." Mira nodded, understanding the pain behind Elowen's words. "Together, we can change things. We can make them pay for what they have done." As the days went by, Elowen grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. Kale trained her personally, pushing her to her limits. "You have potential, Elowen," he said during one session. "You just need to channel your anger into strength." "I'll try," she replied, wiping the sweat from her brow. "But sometimes it feels overwhelming." Kale paused, looking at her intently. "It's okay to feel that way. We are all scared, but we can't let that fear control us. Use it to fuel your fight." Their bond grew deeper with each passing day. Elowen admired Kale's strength and leadership, but she also felt a spark of something more. Yet, the thought of forming a deeper connection frightened her. She had seen how attachments could lead to pain, and she was not sure if she could bear another loss. One evening, while the group shared stories around a small fire, Elowen caught Kyle's gaze. He seemed lost in thought, his expression serious. She leaned over, curious. "What are you thinking about?" Kyle sighed. "The future. There are battles ahead that will test us all. I just hope we can hold on to what we have." Elowen's heart raced. "Do you think we can win? Do you think we can make a difference?" "I believe we can," he said, his voice firm. "But it will take all of us. We can't do it alone." As the fire crackled, Elowen felt a surge of determination. She was ready to fight, not just for her family's legacy, but for everyone who had suffered under the regime. With Kale beside her, she felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. "Then let's do this," she said, her voice steady. "Let's fight for our future." Kale smiled, a warmth in his eyes. "That's the spirit, Elowen. Together, we can change everything." In that moment, Elowen realized she was no longer just a lonely girl wandering the streets. She was a part of something greater, a movement that could bring hope to Eldoria. And with that thought, she felt a fire ignite within her, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The atmosphere in the hideout was heavy with tension. Elowen could feel it in her bones as she paced back and forth, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened. The betrayal had come from someone they trusted, someone who had been with them since the beginning. The failed mission had left the group reeling, and the consequences were dire. "We should have seen it coming," whispered Mira, her voice trembling. She sat on a crate, her hands gripping the edge tightly. We were too trusting. Elowen stopped pacing and looked at her friend. We can't let this break us. We need to regroup and figure out our next move. She felt a flicker of doubt creeping in, but she pushed it aside. The people counted on them. Kyle stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. Elowen is right. We can't afford to lose hope. We need to learn from this. His eyes met Elowen's, a spark of determination shining through. We will find a way to make this right. But how? Mira interjected, her brow furrowed. They know our plans now. We can't just go out there without a solid strategy. Elowen took a deep breath, the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders. We need to gather information. We can't act recklessly. We need to understand their next move. She glanced at Kale, seeking his support. Agreed, Kale said, nodding slowly. We'll split into smaller groups. Gather intel on the regime's movements. We can use the element of surprise to our advantage. As the group began to discuss their new plan, Elowen felt a surge of confidence. The fear that had gripped her earlier started to fade. She was not alone in this fight. They were all in it together, and they would rise above the darkness. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elowen found herself sitting with Kale in a quiet corner of the hideout. The dim light flickered from the oil lamp, casting shadows on the walls. Do you think we can really turn this around? Elowen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale looked at her, his expression serious. We have to believe we can. If we lose hope, we have already lost the war. Elowen nodded, but doubt lingered in her mind. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I lead us to more failure? You won't, Kale reassured her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you think. You've already shown that by standing up after the betrayal. Remember, every leader faces doubt. It's how you respond that matters. Elowen took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of his hand. Thank you, Kyle. I worry about everyone. They trust me to lead. And they will follow you because of your heart, he replied, his eyes softening. You care about them, and that makes you a true leader. As the night wore on, the tension began to ease. They talked about their hopes for the future, their dreams of a free Eldoria. But then, the conversation took a serious turn. Elowen, Kyle said, his voice low, if it comes down to it, if we face a situation where we have to choose between the mission and someone's life, what will you do? The question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Elowen's heart raced. I don't know. I want to save everyone, but I know sacrifices may be needed. Sometimes we must make hard choices, Kale said gently. But remember, you are not alone. Whatever you decide, we will stand by you. As they spoke, Elowen felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, but also a flicker of hope. She had a team that believed in her. They would face whatever came next together. The following day, as the group prepared for their new mission, Elowen stood before them, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. We have faced darkness before, she began, her voice steady, and we will face it again. But we will not let betrayal define us. We will rise, stronger than before, for our freedom, for our future. The group erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted. Elowen felt a warmth spread through her, reminding her of why she fought. They were all in this together, and she would do everything in her power to lead them toward the light. As the sun rose over Eldoria, casting a warm glow on the crumbling buildings, Elowen stood at the edge of a makeshift platform. Her heart raced as she looked out at the faces of her comrades. They had gathered in the abandoned warehouse, a space that had transformed into their new home and a symbol of their fight against the regime. The air buzzed with anticipation. Listen to me, Elowen shouted, her voice breaking through the murmurs. We have faced so much, and yet here we are, standing together. We have made progress, and we will not stop now." The crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on her. She could see the flicker of hope in their expressions, a fire that she desperately wanted to fan into a blaze. "Every raid we have carried out has shaken the government. Each time we strike, we show them that we will not be silenced," Elowen continued, her confidence growing. "We are not just rebels. We are the voice of the people who have suffered in silence for too long." A tall, rugged man stepped forward. It was Finn, one of the older members of the group. "But what if we fail? What if they catch us? We can't afford more losses. We have already lost so much." Elowen met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. "I understand your fear, Finn. I feel it too. But if we do not stand up now, we will never have a chance to fight for what is right. We are the hope that Eldoria needs." Kale, standing at the back, nodded in agreement. He stepped up beside her, his presence steadying. "Elowen is right. We have come too far to turn back. Our recent raids have shown that the people are ready to rise. They are waiting for us to lead." Elowen felt the warmth of Kale's support. It gave her strength. "Exactly. We need to keep pushing. I plan another raid on the supply lines next week. If we can hit them hard, we can disrupt their power and give the people the courage to rise." Whispers of excitement spread through the warehouse. Elowen could see that the fire she had ignited was spreading. "But what about the risks?" a young woman named Mira asked, her voice trembling. "What if we lose more of our own?" Elowen took a deep breath, knowing that this was not an easy path. "Every fight comes with risks, Mira. We cannot avoid them. But running away means we accept the regime's hold over our lives. We have to trust each other. Together, we can protect one another." The room grew quiet, each member of the group reflecting on her words. Elowen felt a surge of determination. "We have the chance to change our fate. We need to be brave, to stand together. Let's show the people of Eldoria that we are their last refuge." A cheer erupted in the warehouse, a wave of hope surging through the group. Elowen smiled, feeling a sense of unity among them. As the meeting ended, Elowen and Kale stepped aside. "You did well," he said, admiration in his eyes. "Your leadership is inspiring them." "I hope so," Elowen replied, her voice softer. "But I can't help but worry. Every time we plan a raid, I think about what could go wrong." Kale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will face whatever comes together. Just remember, you are not alone in this fight." Elowen nodded, grateful for his support. "I know, and that gives me strength." Days passed as the resistance prepared for the raid. Elowen trained harder than ever, pushing herself to be the leader they needed. With each passing moment, the bond between her and Kale grew deeper, yet the weight of their responsibilities loomed over them. Then, the day of the raid arrived. The air was tense, charged with anticipation. Elowen gathered her comrades, each one ready to fight for their cause. "Today, we make our stand," she shouted, her heart pounding with adrenaline. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has suffered under this regime. Let us bring the light of hope back to Eldoria." With a roar of determination, the rebels charged forward, united in their mission. Elowen felt the fire of rebellion burning bright within her, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The tide was turning, and they were prepared to seize their destiny. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a fiery glow over the city of Eldoria. Elowen stood at the front of her gathered comrades, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Today was the day they would launch their final stand against the oppressive regime. She looked around at the faces of her fellow rebels, each one a reflection of the hope they shared. They were ready to fight. Kale stepped beside her, his scarred face set in a determined expression. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice steady. Elowen nodded, though doubt flickered in her mind. "We have to be." This is our chance to end their reign. As they moved toward the government building, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on her shoulders. She remembered her parents' whispered words about courage and justice. They had fought for a better world, and now it was her turn to honor their legacy. The streets of Eldoria were eerily quiet, the calm before the storm. Elowen raised her fist, signaling the group to stop. "Listen up. We have one shot at this. We fight for our families, for the future of our home. We fight for freedom." Her voice rang out, filled with passion. The rebels cheered, their spirits lifted by her words. "For freedom!" they echoed, the sound rolling through the streets like thunder. As they approached the entrance, guards stood ready, weapons drawn. The tension was palpable. "Remember the plan," Kyle reminded the group. "Stick together and trust each other." With a deep breath, Elowen led the charge, her heart racing. The clash of metal filled the air as they engaged the guards. Elowen moved swiftly, dodging strikes and countering with her own. She fought with a fierce determination, fueled by the memories of her parents and the hope of a brighter future. In the midst of the battle, Elowen caught sight of the regime's leader emerging from the shadows. He was a tall figure, cloaked in darkness, with a cold smile that sent chills down her spine. "Ah, Elowen," he called, his voice smooth and mocking. "You've come to play hero, I see." "Stop hiding behind your guards," Elowen shouted back, her anger rising. "Face us like a true leader." The leader laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "You think you've come here to win? You have no idea what you're up against. Your family's past is not what you believe it to be." Elowen's heart raced as he continued. "Did you think they were martyrs? They were traitors. They sought power, not justice." His words struck her like a blow. Doubt crept in, but she pushed it aside. "No, they fought for what was right." The leader stepped closer, his voice low. "And look where that got them. Dead in the streets, just like you will be." With fury igniting in her heart, Elowen charged at him. Their clash was fierce, each blow filled with the weight of her family's legacy. As the battle raged around them, Elowen felt the presence of her comrades, their resolve fueling her strength. She could hear Kale shouting orders, rallying the rebels to push forward. "Don't give up. We are stronger together." In a moment of clarity, Elowen realized that the leader's words were meant to break her spirit. She remembered her parents' true fight, one for the people, for unity and hope. With renewed determination, she found the strength to break free from the leader's grasp. "You will not win today," she declared, her voice fierce and unwavering. "We fight for more than just ourselves. We fight for the future of Eldoria." With a final surge of energy, Elowen struck a decisive blow, sending the leader staggering back. The tide of the battle began to shift as the rebels rallied behind her. As the dust settled, Elowen stood among her comrades, breathless but triumphant. Lives had been lost and sacrifices had been made, but they had fought for something greater than themselves. A new dawn was breaking for Eldoria, and Elowen felt the weight of her past transform into a beacon of hope for the future. In that moment, she understood her journey. She had transformed from a lonely orphan into a fierce leader, ready to rebuild her kingdom with the values of justice, unity, and hope. Share this story if you believe that courage can conquer even the darkest of oppressions. Leave a comment about a time when you stood up for what you believed in, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one.